The 3 second lieutenants surrounded the woman in the wheelchair at the base exchange checkout, their voices dripping with condescension. "Ma'am, where did you get those Marine Corps tattoos? Amazon?" The leader sneered, pointing at the eagle, globe, and anchor visible on her forearm. "Stolen valor is a federal crime, you know." They thought they were protecting military honor. They had no idea they were accusing Gunnery Sergeant Vivian Drake, a Force Recon Marine with 47 combat missions, and that 40 of her brothers and sisters in arms were about to make them regret their arrogance. For more powerful videos about our military heroes, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories. Gunnery Sergeant Vivian Drake, 29 years old, wheeled herself through the sliding doors of Camp Pendleton's main base exchange with the same tactical awareness she'd used to navigate hostile villages in 3 different countries. Her copper-red hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her emerald-green eyes held a sharpness that came from years of identifying threats before they became lethal. She wore civilian clothes today, a simple black tank top and cargo pants, but the Marine Corps tattoos covering her muscular arms told a story that most people never bothered to read. The eagle, globe, and anchor on her right forearm, the dates of her deployments on her left shoulder and on her rib cage, visible when her shirt shifted, the words, "Death before dishonor," in elegant script beneath a skull wearing a Force Recon diver bubble. Her custom racing wheelchair was military-grade titanium, designed for an active lifestyle, painted in Marine Corps scarlet and gold. It had cost nearly $20,000, paid for by a grateful nation through the VA's prosthetic and orthotic program. But it was what the wheelchair represented that mattered most. 3 years ago, Gunnery Sergeant Drake had been leading a Force Reconnaissance team in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Her call sign, Havoc, had been earned through 47 combat missions where she'd proven herself as one of the deadliest operators in Marine Special Operations Command. She could shoot, move, and communicate better than most men twice her size. She could navigate by stars, survive on minimal resources, and make life-or-death decisions in split seconds. Then came Operation Crimson Dawn. Her team had been tasked with capturing a high-value target in a Taliban compound. The mission was successful, but as they were extracting, an IED detonated directly beneath her position. The blast destroyed both her legs below the knee and filled her body with shrapnel that doctors spent 11 hours removing. She'd been medically retired with full honors, her service record classified and extraordinary. But retirement at 29 meant starting over, learning to live in a world that didn't understand what she'd sacrificed or what she was still capable of. The base exchange was her refuge. Here, among fellow service members, she could shop for essentials, grab a coffee, and feel connected to the military community that had been her entire adult life. She had her military retiree ID card. Her license plates marked her as a disabled veteran, and she had every right to use the facilities on base. But today, her peace was about to be shattered by 3 junior officers who had been commissioned less than 6 months ago and thought their gold bars made them superior to everyone else. Lieutenant Kyle Bradford, 23 years old, fresh out of officer candidate school, led his 2 companions through the base exchange like he owned the place. He'd never deployed, he'd never heard a shot fired in anger, but he had a college degree and a commission, which in his mind made him better than the enlisted Marines who actually did the fighting. Beside him walked Second Lieutenant Marcus Chen, whose wealthy parents had political connections that ensured he'd gotten his commission despite barely passing the physical requirements. And bringing up the rear was Second Lieutenant Travis Hoffman, who spent more time taking selfies in his uniform than actually leading Marines. They'd been shopping for new dress uniforms, preparing for an upcoming ceremony where they'd be receiving their first fitness reports. As they approached the checkout line, Bradford noticed Vivien in her wheelchair, her tattooed arms visible, her Marine Corps pride unmistakable. But instead of recognizing a fellow Marine, Bradford saw an opportunity to feel important. "Check this out," he muttered to his companions, gesturing toward Vivien. "Looks like we got a poser." Chen pulled out his phone, already recording. "Dude, This is perfect content, catching stolen valor in the act. Hoffman laughed. I hate people who fake military service. Let's confront her. They had no idea that in the next aisle over, Master Gunnery Sergeant Robert Ironside Johnson was selecting new boots. The 8-year-old career Marine had served with Vivien on 2 deployments. He'd watched her carry wounded Marines under fire. He'd seen her make shots that saved lives. And when he heard the word poser being thrown around, his attention immediately focused on the conversation. Vivien was placing her items on the checkout counter, some toiletries, a new pair of running shoes designed for prosthetic users, and a Camp Pendleton hoodie when the 3 lieutenants positioned themselves in a semicircle around her wheelchair. "Excuse me, ma'am," Bradford said, his tone already accusatory. "I couldn't help but notice your tattoos." Vivien looked up from her wallet, her green eyes meeting Bradford's gaze with the calm of someone who'd faced far more dangerous opponents than arrogant junior officers. "Can I help you, Lieutenant?" Bradford's eyes flickered to her wheelchair, then back to her tattoos. "Those are Marine Corps tattoos. Where did you serve?" "That's personal information," Vivien replied calmly, turning back to the cashier. "And frankly, none of your business." Chen stepped closer, his phone now openly filming. "Actually, ma'am, it is our business. Stolen valor is a federal crime. If you're falsely claiming military service, we have an obligation to report it." The cashier, a young Marine lance corporal, looked uncomfortable but uncertain about how to intervene when officers were involved. Vivien took a slow breath. She'd dealt with this before. People saw the wheelchair, saw her youth, saw a woman, and assumed she couldn't possibly have earned her tattoos. "Lieutenant, I suggest you return to your shopping." "I'll return to my shopping when you prove you actually served," Bradford replied, his voice growing louder. Other customers were starting to notice the commotion. Because real Marines don't end up in wheelchairs from combat. They end up in wheelchairs from drunk driving accidents and trying to fake disability claims. The statement hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Hoffman laughed, adding his own commentary. "Yeah, and even if you did serve, you were probably just admin, pushing papers. Real Marines don't look like you. Real Marines are fit," Chen added, his camera still recording. "They can pass a PFT. They can do their job. They don't need special accommodations." Vivien's hands tightened on her wheelchair's armrests, not out of fear or shame, but out of the controlled anger that came from 3 privileged children questioning her sacrifice. In the next aisle, Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson had heard enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Sergeant Major Williams." "Sergeant Major, it's Ironside. I'm at the main PX. We got a situation. 3 boot lieutenants are accusing Gunnery Drake of stolen valor." The silence on the other end was absolute. When the Sergeant Major finally spoke, his voice was colder than a winter training exercise at Mountain Warfare School. "Gunnery Drake, Vivien Havoc Drake." "Yes, Sergeant Major. Those lieutenants just ended their careers. Don't let them leave. I'm activating the phone tree." Back at the checkout, Bradford had escalated his confrontation. He'd actually reached out and grabbed Vivien's forearm, turning it to examine her eagle, globe, and anchor tattoo more closely. "This is decent work," he said condescendingly. "Almost looks real. Where'd you get it done?" "Some sketchy parlor off base that specializes in military ink for posers." Vivien's voice remained calm, but her eyes had gone ice cold. "Lieutenant, you have 3 seconds to remove your hand from my arm." "Or what?" Bradford sneered. "You going to roll over my feet?" That's when he made his biggest mistake. He reached down and actually grabbed one of the items from Vivien's shopping, the running shoes designed for prosthetic users, and held them up mockingly. "Look at this," he announced to the growing crowd of onlookers. "Special shoes for her disability. Probably just too lazy to exercise like a real Marine." Chen zoomed in with his camera. "This is going to be great content for the group chat. Stolen valor busted at Camp Pendleton." The Lance Corporal cashier finally found his voice. "Sir, I really think you should—" "I'm talking to this civilian." Bradford cut him off. "You can mind your own business, Lance Corporal." That's when Vivien reached into her wallet and pulled out her military ID card. Not her civilian driver's license, not her veteran's card, her actual, official retiree military identification. She held it up for Bradford to see. The card read, "Drake, Vivien R., Gunnery Sergeant, USMC, Ret. Bradford's confident expression flickered just for a moment, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. Retiree card, he said dismissively. Could be fake, could be someone else's. I want to see your DD 214. Carry my discharge papers to go shopping at the PX? If you're claiming to be a retired Marine. Yeah, I do, Bradford replied, because I find it very hard to believe that a woman your age, in a wheelchair, actually served in combat. Why? Vivien asked, her voice deadly quiet. Because women can't be warriors? Or because disabled people aren't worth your respect? Because real combat Marines don't end up like you, Bradford said, gesturing at her wheelchair with disgust. They stay fit, they stay ready, they don't make excuses. The growing crowd of shoppers had gone silent. Several were pulling out their own phones, recording what was quickly becoming a spectacle, but none of them were recording to support Bradford. They were recording because they sensed something bad was about to happen to these arrogant officers. In the parking lot, vehicles were beginning to arrive. One by one, pickup trucks and SUVs pulled into spaces near the entrance. The occupants, all senior enlisted, Marines in civilian clothes, stepped out with the coordinated precision of people who'd responded to emergencies together for decades. Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson moved to block the exit, ensuring the 3 lieutenants wouldn't be able to leave before this situation was resolved. His phone was buzzing constantly now as more Marines arrived, all asking the same question. Is it true? Are they really messing with Havoc? Inside, Vivien had reached the end of her patience. She looked at Bradford with the same cold calculation she'd used to identify enemy combatants through a rifle scope. Lieutenant, you've made several mistakes today. Would you like me to explain them? The only mistake here is you impersonating a Marine, Bradford shot back. Vivien's voice took on the tone of someone used to commanding respect in life or death situations. My name is Vivien Rachel Drake, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Retired. I served for 11 years. I completed Force Reconnaissance training. I was assigned to 1st Force Reconnaissance Company. My call sign was Havoc. I conducted 47 combat missions across 3 deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. Bradford rolled his eyes. Sure you did, and I'm the Commandant of the Marine Corps. I earned 3 Purple Hearts, Vivien continued, her voice growing stronger. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Navy Commendation Medal with Combat V, and a nomination for the Silver Star after I held a defensive position for 6 hours while my team evacuated wounded Marines under heavy enemy fire. Chen laughed from behind his camera. This is the best fiction I've heard in years. Next, you'll tell us you were a sniper. Designated marksman, Vivien corrected. 17 confirmed kills. All enemy combatants. All threats to my Marines. Hoffman had heard enough. Look, lady, we're officers in the United States Marine Corps. We know what real Marines look like, and you're not it. So why don't you take your fake ID and your Amazon tattoos and get out of our store? Your store, Vivien repeated quietly. That's right, Bradford said, pulling rank. As commissioned officers, we have authority over this facility, and we're telling you to leave before we call the military police and have you arrested for stolen valor and trespassing on a military installation. That's when the doors opened. Sergeant Major Williams walked in first. At 52 years old, with silver hair and a chest full of ribbons worth decades of service, he moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd earned respect the hard way. Behind him came Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson, and behind them, streaming through the entrance in a flood of muscle and determination, came 40 more senior enlisted Marines, Master Sergeants, Gunnery Sergeants, First Sergeants, staff NCOs who'd served in every major conflict over the past 3 decades. They filled the base exchange like a tide of experience and hard-earned wisdom. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They simply formed a perimeter around the checkout area, creating a wall of enlisted leadership that made the 3 junior officers suddenly look like children who'd wandered into the wrong room. Bradford's confident expression crumbled. Chen lowered his phone. Hoffman actually took a step backward. Sergeant Major Williams surveyed the scene, the shopping items scattered on the counter, the 3 lieutenants who'd been harassing one of his Marines, the crowd of shoppers recording everything. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with the cold fire of someone who'd spent 30 years teaching lessons to people who needed them. Gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. I am Sergeant Major Williams, senior enlisted advisor for this regiment. Would one of you like to explain what's happening here? Bradford tried to summon his earlier confidence. Sergeant Major, were you just accusing a retired Marine of stolen valor? Williams cut him off. Because that's what I heard. That's what these witnesses heard, and that's what these cameras recorded. We were protecting the integrity of the Corps, Chen stammered. She doesn't look like what? Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson stepped forward. Doesn't look like a Marine? I served 2 combat tours with Gunnery Sergeant Drake. She carried my bleeding ass 3 miles through enemy territory after I took an AK round to the leg. She saved my life, so please, Lieutenant, tell me what a Marine is supposed to look like. Another Master Gunnery Sergeant moved forward. I'm MG Sergeant Rodriguez. Gunny Drake was my team leader in Helmand Province. I watched her take out an enemy mortar team at 800 meters with 3 shots. 3 shots, 3 kills, saved 40 Marines who would have been hit by that next mortar round. So please, explain to me how she's not a real Marine. One by one, the senior enlisted Marines began sharing their stories. She pulled me from a burning vehicle. She held a defensive position while we evacuated wounded. She cleared a compound that Intel said was too dangerous for a team our size. She trained me. She made me the NCO I am today. The testimonies kept coming, each one adding another layer to the picture of who Vivian Drake really was. Not a faker, not a poser, but a legitimate warrior who'd given everything for her Corps and her brothers and sisters in arms. Sergeant Major Williams let them speak, let the weight of their collective experience crush the arrogance of 3 lieutenants who'd thought they knew better. Finally, he held up a hand for silence. Gunnery Sergeant Drake, he said, his voice softening as he addressed her directly. Are you all right? Vivien nodded once, her composure never breaking. I'm fine, Sergeant Major. Just trying to buy some running shoes. Williams turned his attention back to the 3 lieutenants. Gentlemen, let me educate you about the woman you two just accused of stolen valor. He pulled out his own phone and brought up a document. This is Gunnery Sergeant Drake's service record. It's partially redacted because some of her operations remain classified, but I can tell you what's not classified, he began reading. 11 years of service, 3 combat deployments, Force Reconnaissance qualified, jump school, dive school, SARE school, advanced marksmanship instructor, combat lifesaver certified, speaks 3 languages including Pashto and Arabic, 47 combat missions, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor device, Navy Commendation Medal with Combat V, and a recommendation for the Silver Star that's currently working its way through the awards process. The store had gone completely silent. On March 14th, 3 years ago, Williams continued, Gunnery Sergeant Drake was leading a Force Recon team on a direct action mission in Helmand Province. Her team had successfully captured a high-value target. As they were extracting, an IED detonated directly beneath her position. The blast destroyed both her legs below the knee and filled her body with shrapnel. He paused, letting that sink in. Her team immediately moved to provide medical aid and evacuate her. But do you know what Gunnery Sergeant Drake did while lying there with her legs destroyed? None of the lieutenants answered. She continued to direct her team, Williams said, his voice thick with emotion. She maintained radio contact with air support. She coordinated the extraction of the high-value target. She kept her team calm and focused, even while she was bleeding out. The corpsman who treated her said she never stopped being a leader, even when she should have been unconscious from shock and pain. He looked directly at Bradford. So when you said real Marines don't end up in wheelchairs, what you meant was you have absolutely no concept of what real sacrifice looks like, Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson added. Gunny Drake could have taken a medical retirement and disappeared. Instead, she's been volunteering at the Wounded Warrior Battalion, counseling other injured Marines. She mentors young female Marines. She advocates for better prosthetic care through the VA. She gives back to the Corps every single day, even though the Corps can't give her back what she lost. Another gunnery sergeant stepped forward. I'm Jizect Martinez. I was on that mission. I was the one carrying the HVT when the IED went off. If Gunny Drake hadn't been leading us, if she hadn't maintained composure and coordinated our extraction, we all would have died. The Taliban had fighters closing in. We had no air support available. She talked us through it, bleeding out, legs destroyed, and got every single one of us home alive. The testimonies had transformed the confrontation into something else. This wasn't just about defending Vivien anymore. This was about teaching 3 junior officers what leadership actually meant. Sergeant Major Williams stepped closer to the 3 lieutenants. Here's what's going to happen. You 3 are going to apologize to Gunnery Sergeant Drake. Then you're going to pay for everything she was purchasing today. Then you're going to report to your commanding officer and explain what you did. And then you're going to spend the next 6 months learning what it actually means to be a Marine officer. And if we refuse? Bradford asked weakly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Then you'll find out why senior enlisted Marines are called the backbone of the Corps, Williams replied. We don't threaten, we educate. And trust me, Lieutenant, the education we have planned for you would make Hell Week look like a vacation. Chen was crying now, actual tears of shame. Sergeant Major, we didn't know. We thought. You thought wrong. Williams cut him off. You judged a warrior based on her appearance. You assumed that because she's in a wheelchair, she couldn't possibly have earned her place in our Corps. That's not just ignorance. That's the kind of prejudice that gets people killed in combat. Bradford pulled out his wallet with shaking hands. Gunnery Sergeant, I'm so sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. We were completely wrong. His companions did the same, placing more than enough money on the counter to cover Vivien's purchases and then some. But Vivien wasn't finished with them. She wheeled her chair forward, positioning herself directly in front of the 3 lieutenants. Do you know why this wheelchair doesn't define me? She asked. They shook their heads. Because I'm still a Marine, she said. I still have the training. I still have the mindset. I still have the heart. This wheelchair is just equipment, like my rifle was equipment, like my dive gear was equipment. It helps me accomplish my mission, which is to live a full life and serve my fellow Marines however I can. She looked each of them in the eye. You 3 have a choice now. You can let this moment break you, make you bitter and defensive, or you can let it teach you. You can learn that leadership isn't about rank or physical perfection. It's about character. It's about respect. It's about understanding that the Marines you lead come in all forms, and all of them deserve your best. Hoffman found his voice. Gunnery Sergeant, how do we make this right? You don't, Vivien replied honestly. You can't undo what you said, but you can do better going forward. You can learn to look beyond appearances. You can earn the right to wear those gold bars by becoming the kind of officers that Marines actually want to follow. Sergeant Major Williams nodded approvingly. Even now, she's teaching. That's what great NCOs do. The 3 lieutenants gathered their belongings, their dress uniforms forgotten. As they headed toward the exit, they had to walk through the gauntlet of 40 senior enlisted Marines, each one's expression a mixture of disappointment and stern judgment. At the door, Bradford turned back one final time. Gunnery Sergeant Drake, you're what we should aspire to be. Thank you for your service, and I'm sorry for what you lost. Vivien nodded once, accepting the apology with the grace of someone who'd learned to carry loss without bitterness. After they left, the store erupted in applause. Shoppers who'd witnessed the confrontation stood and clapped. Other Marines saluted. The Lance Corporal cashier stood at attention, tears in his eyes. The base exchange manager, a retired colonel, approached with tears streaming down his face. Gunny, your purchases today are free, and for the record, you're welcome in this store anytime. Those 3 are banned. But the most meaningful moment came when each of the 40 senior enlisted Marines approached Vivien individually. They didn't make speeches, they just placed a hand on her shoulder, exchanged a look that spoke of shared sacrifice and mutual respect, and moved on. Master Gunnery Sergeant Johnson stayed behind. You, good, Havoc? Vivien smiled, using his question to lighten the mood. I'm good, Ironside, though I didn't expect my shopping trip to turn into a circus. With you, it's never boring, Johnson replied. But seriously, you know you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, right? Your record speaks for itself. I know, Vivien said, but sometimes people need to be reminded that warriors come in all forms. If today taught those 3 lieutenants that lesson, Maybe it was worth it. Sergeant Major Williams approached one final time. Gunny, I want you to know something. Those 3 lieutenants are about to have the worst 6 months of their lives. Their commanding officer is a Mustang who came up through the enlisted ranks. He's going to make them understand what it means to serve. Vivien nodded. Good. Not to punish them, but to teach them. They have potential. They just need guidance. That's why you were such a great team leader, Williams said. Always saw the potential in people, always believed they could be better. As the crowd dispersed and the base exchange returned to normal operations, Vivien sat with her purchases now paid for by the 3 lieutenants who'd learned the hardest lesson of their young careers. She wasn't angry, she wasn't bitter. She'd faced too much real adversity to be bothered by ignorance. But she was tired. Tired of having to prove herself. Tired of being judged by her wheelchair instead of her character. A young female Marine, couldn't have been more than 19, approached shyly. Gunnery Sergeant? I just wanted to say, I'm thinking about trying out for Force Recon, but I wasn't sure if women could really do it. After seeing you today, after hearing your story, I know I can. Vivien smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed all day. You absolutely can. Don't let anyone tell you different. And if you need a mentor, you know where to find me. As the afternoon wore on, word spread throughout Camp Pendleton. The story of the 3 arrogant lieutenants who'd accused a Force Recon legend of stolen valor was being told in every barracks, every mess hall, every duty station on the base. By evening, the 3 lieutenants had reported to their commanding officer, Major Richard Stone, a prior enlisted Marine who'd spent 15 years as an NCO before earning his commission. The meeting was not pleasant. By the time they left his office, they understood that their careers hung by a thread and that they would spend the next 6 months proving they deserved to wear the Marine Corps uniform. Vivian Drake went home to her small apartment off base, put away her purchases, and sat on her balcony watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. She thought about the day, about the confrontation, about the 40 Marines who'd shown up to defend her. She thought about the 3 lieutenants and hoped they'd learn from this, hoped they'd become better officers, better leaders, better Marines, because at the end of the day, that's what the Corps was about, taking raw potential and forging it into something stronger, something better, something worthy of the title Marine. And as she sat there, her prosthetic legs propped up, her tattoos visible in the fading light, Vivian Drake knew that no matter what anyone said, no matter how they judged her, she was still a Marine. She would always be a Marine. And nothing, not injury, not prejudice, not ignorance, could ever take that away from her. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged unfairly based on their appearance or physical abilities? Have you ever made assumptions about someone's capabilities without knowing their story? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that true warriors come in all forms, hit that subscribe button because everyone deserves to have their story told and everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not just what they appear to be.